There is one thing I want you to understand very clearly from the beginning. Carl Jung never used the term super empath in any of his works. Jung did not give it a name, but he described many psychological structures, layers of the conscious unconscious, the process of individuation, the integration of the shadow, and the expansion of awareness, which later contemporary psychologists such as Elaine Aron, Sam Vaknin, Craig Malkin, Judith Orloff, along with many Jungian analysts, used as the foundation to describe a personality type with unusually deep intuition, an exceptional ability to perceive the inner world of others, and a spiritual boundary strength far beyond that of a typical empath. They are the ones who define this constellation of traits with the name the world now recognizes, Super Empath. And if you've ever wondered why certain people can both sense others' emotions with extreme subtlety and still stand firm against manipulations, able to see through everything without losing themselves, that is precisely the description of this archetype. A super empath is not a stronger version of a sensitive person. They are the result of a profound psychological maturation process in which compassion is no longer driven by the fear of abandonment, but supported by awareness, boundaries, and inner integration. What sets them apart is not only the ability to feel, but the ability to understand emotions at their roots, to read the hidden motives beneath behaviors, to see another person's shadow, and most importantly, to not lose their own identity when facing that darkness. From a Jungian perspective, a super empath is someone who has entered into dialogue with their own shadow, confronted the uncomfortable parts of their ego, and instead of being devoured by them, learned to integrate them. When someone understands their own darkness, they become impervious to the darkness of others. This is the one thing a narcissist never anticipates. While the narcissist spends their entire life constructing a persona, a perfect mask to hide their core shame, the super empath spends their life peeling away their own masks to return to the true self. One lives by illusion, the other lives by truth. This contrast creates the powerful yet dangerous magnetism between them. A narcissist sees in the super empath what they themselves will never possess: a depth of inner world that cannot be measured, an almost instinctive situational intuition, compassion that is not tied to dependency, an inner light that makes others feel truly seen. That is why they are instantly drawn, and also why they are terrified. If there is one difference that makes the super empath something a narcissist is both captivated by and terrified of, it is their ability to see through everything without reacting. This is not emotional suppression, as many people mistakenly assume, but a form of deep awareness forged through experience and psychological maturity. While most people react automatically through emotions, anger, hurt, confusion, anxiety, the super empath pauses, observes, and understands. The narcissist builds their entire manipulation system on a reaction matrix. They believe they can control others by triggering emotions. If they make you angry, you become defensive. If they make you confused, you seek their validation. If they make you feel guilty, you adjust your behavior to meet their demands. But this matrix collapses completely when they encounter a super empath, someone who does not operate through reaction but through awareness. A super empath doesn't just sense someone's emotions, they decode them. And this has been scientifically confirmed by two psychological researchers. The first study comes from Dr. Paul Ekman, the father of micro-expression research. Ekman discovered that micro-expressions, tiny facial movements lasting only 1/25 of a second, reveal a person's true emotions, even when they attempt to hide them. What's interesting is that super empaths seem to have a natural ability to detect these micro-expressions. When a narcissist says, "I'm not angry," but the corner of their eye tightens slightly, or their lips pause for 1/10 of a second, The super empath immediately perceives the truth beneath the words. This makes them immune to gaslighting, because gaslighting only works when the victim stops trusting their own perception. But a super empath trusts the smallest details another person's body reveals, and this is something a narcissist cannot conceal, no matter how skilled they are at performing. The second study comes from Dr. Stephen Porges, author of the polyvagal theory. Porges demonstrated that the human nervous system can detect signals of safety or danger through another person's voice, breathing rhythm, gaze, and facial tone. Those with highly sensitive nervous systems, including many super empaths, can read these signals more accurately than average. This means they don't just hear the narcissist's words, they hear the energy behind the words. A narcissist may compliment you, but their voice lacks softness. The super empath senses the manipulation. A narcissist may say they're fine, but their breathing shifts. The super empath detects the vulnerability. A narcissist may ignore you, but their eyes flicker. The super empath knows they're trying to trigger instability in you. These studies prove one thing. Super empaths don't have mystical intuition. They have a nervous system attuned to truth and a mind that analyzes subtle patterns. And this is precisely what makes them a threat to narcissists, because narcissists need others to be blind to their behavior in order to maintain control. But a super empath is never blind. They see, and the truth they see is not surface truth, it is core truth. They see the fear of abandonment beneath the anger. They see the need for control beneath the sweetness. They see the emptiness beneath the arrogance. They see the primordial shame beneath the self-glorification. And most importantly, they see without reacting the way the narcissist expects. When the narcissist tries to create drama to make you lose control, the super empath observes the instability in their inner child. When the narcissist uses silence as punishment, the super empath does not panic. They see the avoidance of responsibility. When the narcissist uses compliments to manipulate, the super empath does not inflate. They recognize the hidden motive. The whole world becomes a stage for the narcissist, except when they stand before a super empath. Because a super empath does not play the role of the audience. They are the one who sees through the stage and into the backstage where the actor removes the mask. This is what makes the narcissist uneasy from the very beginning. They feel they can't get a grip on you. They try idealization, you don't get swept away. They try jealousy tactics, you don't react. They try withdrawal, you don't chase. This calmness makes the narcissist feel out of control, and losing control is their deepest fear. But what truly threatens them is how deeply you understand them. No one understands a narcissist the way a super empath does, sometimes even better than they understand themselves. You understand their motives before they act them out. You understand their fears before they attack you. You understand their desires before they admit them. For someone who lives through illusion, being understood more honestly than they allow is a feeling of exposure and vulnerability. However, the insight of a super empath has no intention to harm or belittle. It is awareness without judgment. But this lack of judgment terrifies the narcissist because they cannot manipulate someone who refuses to play the role of attacker or victim. Here lies the key. A super empath does not participate in the narcissist's power dynamics. They do not fight to win, they do not submit to be loved, they simply exist, and that presence destabilizes the entire defensive structure of the narcissist. Insight is an invisible slap. It does not hurt through force, but through exposure. It makes the narcissist see themselves, and that is what terrifies them. This is why truth is considered the narcissist's greatest enemy. Truth does not attack them, it strips them. Yet, while the super empath's insight makes the narcissist uneasy, it is the sovereign silence that destroys them. The silence of a super empath is not resignation, not passive strategy, and not punishment. It is a sign of something deeper. Your mind is no longer a place where they reside. It is the moment the narcissist's entire emotional matrix, a system built entirely on activating you, abruptly loses its power source. The narcissist expects you to ask, "What's wrong?" Expects your confusion, expects your pain, expects you to explain, repair, chase. But when you choose silence instead, what they feel is not the absence of sound, but the absence of power. What makes the super empath's silence so devastating is that it comes from awareness, not emotion. A narcissist can manipulate emotion, but they are powerless against awareness. And when this silence appears, it carries a very clear message: I am no longer in your game. This triggers in the narcissist a deep panic, which they mask through one of three familiar responses: rage, clinging, or denial. But no matter how they respond, it all stems from the same fear. They are losing control of the narrative for the first time. What does silence do to someone who survives on the reactions of others? It forces them to face themselves. As long as you react, whether with anger, sadness, or attempts to explain, you are still maintaining the illusion that they matter in your life. But when you are silent, they are confronted with an undeniable truth: that meaning is gone. What a narcissist fears most is not being hated, it is being irrelevant. Hate is still energy, still connection, but indifference is erasure. It is the death of the illusion, and for a narcissist, it is a form of psychological death. It's carve. When a super empath becomes silent, they unintentionally expose what the narcissist has hidden all their life: their emotional dependence on the reactions of others. A narcissist has no stable identity. They must create it through the eyes of others. When you step away from being the observer and refuse to be the mirror, they become empty. And this emptiness is not a mild discomfort, it is existential panic. It pushes the narcissist to do anything to re-trigger you, because triggering you equals existing again in your mind. This is why they return with sudden sweetness, half-hearted apologies, vulnerability performances, or victim theatrics. They do not come back because they miss you. They come back because they need you to escape the emptiness your silence created. But here is the remarkable part. Once a super empath reaches the stage of sovereign silence, they no longer fall into old cycles. They see too clearly now. They do not respond, they simply see. Their silence is not a wall, it is a mirror. And in that mirror, the narcissist sees they no longer control you. This silence creates no noise, but creates psychological gravity. The narcissist feels that gravity as the sensation of being pulled out of the center. When they are no longer prioritized in your mind, they lose their function in their own life. And this is what drives them mad. The super empath does not need revenge. The withdrawal of their energy is the verdict. The narcissist will never say it, but they fear this silence more than any confrontation. They can control confrontation. They cannot touch silence. Silence also exposes their true form. When the super empath stops reacting, all manipulative behaviors suddenly become obvious, crude, repetitive. The games that once seemed sophisticated now look like desperate attempts. The stories that once sounded plausible now feel hollow. Without your responses to shape their performance, the narcissist loses their sense of direction. This leads to what psychologists call a disorganized cycle, a cycle of loss of control in which the narcissist no longer knows whether to attack, seduce, or punish. Without your reactions as a compass, they spin in the chaos of their own mind. But the most important point is this: the super empath's silence doesn't make the narcissist collapse all at once. It makes them collapse slowly, deeply, and irreversibly. At first, they are angry because they've lost power. Then they are confused because they don't understand what changed. Then they begin to feel fear, the fear of being rendered meaningless. And finally, they become obsessed with you because you become the one person they cannot control, cannot read, cannot conquer. The greatest paradox here is this: The super empath is not silent to hurt the narcissist. They are silent because they have seen the truth and understand that there is nothing left to say. That silence, in essence, is the highest form of compassion, the refusal to allow oneself to continue being pulled into a system that has no capacity to heal. But for the narcissist, silence is a traumatic event, because it forces them to face the one thing they have always run from: themselves. And it is here that the power spiral between the narcissist and the super empath ends. The one who once needed reflection to exist has now lost the mirror, and the one who once reflected now draws their light back to themselves. Silence is not the end of the war. It is the beginning of freedom. When the super empath's silence appears, it does not stop at simply withdrawing attention. It goes much deeper. It begins to affect the psychological structure of the narcissist, a structure that has been held together not by true strength, but by defense. The narcissist does not live from a healthy ego. They live from a constructed ego. And when the super empath no longer participates in that system, this ego begins to show cracks that even the narcissist cannot control. To understand this fracturing, we must return to something Carl Jung once said: the shadow will always try to take over whenever the outer light goes out. The super empath's silence is precisely the moment the outer light goes out. And when it disappears, the shadow, the part the narcissist has spent their whole life hiding, rises from within. Throughout the relationship, the narcissist is never truly stable. They constantly regulate their emotions through other people's reactions. They borrow attention as psychological supply. They use drama to reaffirm their sense of existence. When the super empath falls silent, they are, for the first time, forced to face the state they fear most, having no one left to reflect them. And this is where the fracturing begins. The first thing that happens is identity confusion. The narcissist doesn't truly know who they are without others defining them. When the super empath withdraws their energy, the narcissist falls into a state like losing gravity. They no longer know which image of themselves is present: the strong one, the victim, the seductive one, the wounded one. Without your reactions, they cannot choose a role. And when they cannot choose a role, they cannot maintain their ego. After confusion comes emptiness. This is not ordinary loneliness. It is an inner disintegration, like falling into a void. Psychoanalysts call this ego dissolution, the disintegration of the ego, when a structure that depends on external validation loses its anchor. The narcissist is not consciously aware of this. They only feel that they can't bear the quiet. But in truth, they are finally feeling the core emptiness they've avoided their entire life. When confronted with emptiness, people usually have two choices: to look into it or to run from it. But for the narcissist, running is instinct. And so they begin to look for you, not for you as a real person, but for the role you once played in their psychological mechanism. They need again the feeling of someone reflecting them, reacting to them, seeing them as important. But by now, your silence has already created a shift in the system. They feel that their hands can no longer grip the lever of power. From this stage, the third fracture appears: the rebellion of the shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is the repressed part, the part that holds hurt, shame, jealousy, fear, the smallness that the ego cannot accept. As long as the super empath is still reacting, the narcissist can pour their energy into convincing you, manipulating you, or fighting you. But when you are silent, they no longer have a target to project their darkness onto. The shadow needs somewhere to go, and when it can no longer go into you, it turns back onto them. This is the stage where the narcissist becomes moody, volatile, easily triggered, and out of control. They don't understand what is happening, but they feel as if they are being invaded from within. In reality, they are facing the very part they have avoided for years: The fear of not being enough, the primordial shame, the jealousy they buried, and the sense of meaninglessness they dread most. With no one left to hide behind, they must face the darkness for what it truly is. And in that chaos, they begin to search for ways to restore power. They try to trigger you with apologies, then with blame, then with threatening silence, then with fake affection, then with displays of suffering. But what they don't understand is this: your silence no longer comes from need, but from liberation. You are no longer trapped in their emotional testing ground. This makes them desperate, because every strategy suddenly turns into an echo falling into empty space. When they fail to pull you back, the fourth fracture appears, a crisis of self-image. The narcissist survives on the sense of, I am special, I am important, I deserve attention. But when the person who once understood them most deeply and connected most strongly chooses silence, they can no longer convince themselves that they are superior. They try to cling to their self-image by telling themselves, she'll come back, he still cares, they're just testing me. But the more they repeat this, the more they feel the opposite truth growing stronger. Their image is no longer powerful enough to keep you there. Where this process ultimately leads is a confrontation with the truth of who they are. And that is the one place the narcissist never wants to go. They are not built to face their inner world. They are built to run from it. But when the super empath is silent, the escape door closes. No more anchor, no more emotional launch pad, no more stage to perform on, no more audience to validate them. Their shadow, which they once cast on everyone else, returns and stands directly in front of them. Your silence does not force them to change, but it forces them to have nowhere left to run. This is the true power of sovereign silence. It does not attack the narcissist. It flattens the environment so they can finally see themselves. It does not strike the ego. It deprives the ego of anything to hold on to. And when the ego has nothing to cling to, all their illusions, their fake grandiosity, fake confidence, and fake victimhood collapse on their own. The super empath does not destroy the narcissist. They withdraw their energy so the narcissist is left alone with their own powerlessness. The fracture begins within, but at this point, it no longer happens quietly. It becomes a total disintegration, where the illusion the narcissist used to live, to love, to exist in the eyes of others starts to lose its effect. To understand this collapse, we must remember that the narcissist does not live by truth. They live by a version of truth, a version edited, cropped, and exaggerated to fit their false self. But when the super empath is silent and pulls their energy back, that version no longer has material to run on. The first thing to fall apart is their ability to convince themselves. Narcissists are very good storytellers to themselves. They always have a narrative that makes them the one who is right, the one who is wounded, the one who deserves sympathy. As long as you're still reacting, they still have a chance to bend the story around your behavior. But when you become a quiet field, their story loses its anchor. They say one thing, but their heart doesn't believe it. They deny something, but their body knows it's false. And this mismatch is what makes the entire narrative start to dissolve. Next, the fake confidence, the armor they've built, begins to crack. When you no longer seek validation from them, when you no longer kneel before their emotional system, when you stand firm in the face of their fluctuations, a message echoes in their mind that they cannot deny. You are no longer affected by them. Nothing disorients a narcissist faster than realizing that the power they believed was absolute actually depends entirely on your will. When you change, their power disappears. This truth is not just uncomfortable. It melts the rock of pride they thought was their foundation. After that, a deeper phenomenon emerges, the collapse of their self-idealization mechanism. A narcissist does not truly love themselves. They love the version of themselves they have built, and they need others to reflect that version to keep it alive. When the super empath is silent, there is no one left to reflect. No one confirms that they are special. No one feeds their sense of power. No one nourishes the illusion of superiority they depend on. And for the first time in a long time, sometimes for the first time in their life, they fall into the emptiness of the real self. Not the self they want, but the self they have hidden. Small, shaky, afraid, alone. This is when the fourth level of collapse appears, a crisis of control. The state of control is the operating key of the narcissist. They control through emotion, through narrative, through your reactions, through your fluctuations. But when you no longer fluctuate, they no longer know what to do to exist. We must remember, for the narcissist, existence is not breathing. Existence is being reflected. When you are silent, they feel erased from your world, and that threatens their identity at a primal level. This crisis shifts them from fake confidence into desperate seeking. They try to hold on to you through memories, through hope, through recreating old scripts, but nothing makes you come back and react. From this point on, the illusion of power, the very thing they depend on to feel important, begins to collapse. What's interesting is that this collapse does not happen like an instant shattering. It is more like a swaying tower, losing one stone at a time when nothing is left to hold it together. The narcissist experiences moments when they believe they can pull you back, that they still have influence, that they still matter in your eyes. But your silence responds with a cold truth. You are no longer standing inside their vortex. And what they fear most is not the loss itself, but having no one left to validate their power. At this stage, the narcissist often enters a cycle of illusion reconstruction. They attempt to rebuild a new version of themselves to face the fact that you have changed. They may become more charming, more dominant, more aloof, or more theatrical, all to restore their image. But this new version cannot stand, because there is no witness. This is what many psychoanalysts call the crack in the mirror, the fracture in their source of reflection. When the mirror you once held steady is no longer facing them, they see themselves distorted in every other mirror. New people cannot reflect them deeply as you did. Old people no longer believe them, and they themselves no longer believe in the version they created. It is precisely during this stage that a unique phenomenon appears. They begin to obsess over you, not because of love, but because you are the first person who did not reinforce their illusion. You become the break point in the system, and they have no idea how to handle it. They miss you not because you were gentle. They miss you because you no longer reflect them. And the paradox lies here. When you loved them, they could not see you. When you stop loving, they see you most clearly. But what they see is not you, it is themselves, in raw truth, without protection. Eventually, all of this leads to a deep collapse that not everyone can see from the outside. The narcissist loses the ability to believe in the story they tell themselves. When you are silent, they no longer have supply to rebuild those stories. They say, "I'm fine," but their mind answers no. They say, "I don't care," but their obsession says otherwise. They say, "She lost me," but the emptiness inside them proves the opposite. This is the point every narcissist fears reaching. The truth that no one took their power. They never had real power to begin with. They merely borrowed it from other people's reactions. After everything, the super empath's insight, the sovereign silence, the fracturing of the ego, and the dissolution of illusion, we realize something rarely spoken. The super empath never set out to destroy the narcissist. They simply returned to their own truth. And that return alone is what places everything back in its rightful place. The narcissist does not collapse because you left. They collapse because, for the first time, they no longer have anyone to help them escape themselves. When you are silent, you do not create a void to punish them. You create a void in which truth can no longer be hidden. The truth that the power they believed was invincible only existed when there was an audience. The truth that the grandiose self they created stood only because someone else believed in it. The truth that they did not lose you, they lost the role you once allowed them to play. And most importantly, they never fear losing you as much as they fear losing their ability to control how you see them. On the other hand, the super empath walks through this stage not with a sense of victory, but with maturity. Their silence is not a declaration of, "I am above you," but a gentle yet powerful acknowledgement. "I no longer belong to this game." Is Alestis. That is the moment they step into an entirely different space, the space of someone who understands the nature of attachment, the nature of darkness, the nature of emotional power, and most importantly, the nature of their own self. Jung once said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light. One becomes enlightened by making the darkness conscious." Well, the super empath has faced that darkness. Not only the narcissist's darkness, but their own. Unconditional compassion, endurance beyond limits, the fear of abandonment, the deep belief in the goodness of people. When they look back, they no longer blame themselves for loving too much. They know that this wide heart is exactly why they survived every trial. The narcissist will continue their journey, a journey filled with loops, illusions replacing old illusions. But the super empath is different. Once truth has opened, they do not return to the shadows. They understand that their greatest strength is not the ability to see through others, but the ability to see through themselves, and from there they move forward with a steadiness no one can take away. In the end, the ending with a narcissist is not the ending of your heart. It is the beginning of a journey where you no longer try to fix anyone, no longer try to save anyone, no longer lose yourself inside someone else's storm. You move forward with a deep inner ease. You have returned. Return to yourself, to a light that needs no reflection, to a peace that needs no validation, to a strength that needs no proof. And that is what the narcissist fears most. But it is also what makes you the freest.